So Tayush was founded around the Intifada time, and it is a protective presence activism. So it's not a formal group. People call themselves like that. They come and we stand with Palestinian shepherds usually that are attacked by settlers who try to take over their lands, the grazing lands. They enter with their sheep and confront them, and then they have less and less agricultural land. And apart on top of that, the Israeli military has designated an area that it called a closed military zone, firing zone, training firing zone, in which you have something like 12 little hamlets of shepherds that the Supreme Court in Israel already decided that it is legal to remove them all, so to evacuate them or ethnically cleanse if you want. This is what the parts of area of the West Bank that is called Area C. You have Area A, B, and C. Area C is the major part of the land. It's the only part that is that has continuity. So all the areas A and B are like little islands.
Yes.
And then the Palestinians are kind of caged into these areas. They can move about, but harder. Area C, 62% of the land, of the West Bank, is where they want to cleanse the Palestinians from. Because you don't have many Palestinians there. The majority are in Area A and B, these little islands. And in Area C you have about 200,000 Palestinians left, very scattered among the settlers, among army bases, and so on. And they want to cleanse this area, so to push the Palestinians into these enclaves of Area A and B. And then they can take over 62% of the West Bank. So both the military and the settlers there are trying to push away the Palestinians from these lands. The settlers, in order for their messianic goals, they call it Judaize the land. And the military, because it is easier to protect the Jews when there's no Palestinians around. And of course the settlers have Israeli ID, they're protected by the law, and the Palestinians do not have any ID, do not have citizenship of the Israeli state that occupies them. And therefore when we come as Israeli activists, we have the same status as the settlers have, because we come there and we stay with our citizenship, of course. And then the soldiers are also supposed to protect us, but we come and help the Palestinians against the soldiers and settlers, which creates a little bit of a confusion for them, and it de-escalates a little bit the situation. And we can try and help Palestinians stay in their villages, in their houses, and also in their grazing lands. This is why it's called protective presence. Well, we film, we sometimes buffer between violence and Palestinians, and so on. This is the work that has been done for 20-something years now. But lately, since COVID, so last 3 years or so, you have groups of younger generation. They already don't call themselves the Ayush. They don't have a name, and they they come and they stay in the village and live there, inside the villages, and live with the Palestinians. And they try to create a different situation for Palestinians to stay on their lands. During the war, it intensified a lot. Because suddenly the soldiers, all of them were taken to Gaza to fight after October 7th. Then the settlers were enlisted into the military as an emergency call, and they were supposed to guard their own settlements. But instead of just guarding the settlements, they went out and try to push many Palestinians not only from their fields, take over their agricultural land like they've been doing for decades. This time they actually felt they have the opportunity to use the fact that there is no soldiers around, that while the soldiers helped them all the time, but also kept them, restrained them a little bit. So it was like a force that was in between, helping them to take over, but also restraining them a little bit. Not always giving them, you know, it was like, because the soldiers are supposed to keep the order. Yeah, so you call the soldiers and they don't always allow the settlers to take over. Sometimes yes, sometimes no, sometimes. But in such a moment when suddenly there was no soldiers around, they go into Gaza. The settlers received weapons, were enlisted into the military as reserve duty to guard their settlements, but they used that in order to remove villages, full villages.
So now, settlers by themselves doing.
This was for about a month.
About a month.
So October 7th until the beginning of November somewhere. And that was only them, and then they raided Palestinian villages, they shot sometimes and killed people, they broke things, and they, at gunpoint, they frightened many people out of their villages. About 13, I think, villages were cleansed like that in all of the West Bank. But then Biden administration that was afraid of an uprising in the West Bank has restrained Israel a little bit, and Israel restrained the settlers a little bit. And now it is more than it used to be before the war, the violence and the takeover, but it is less than it was in the beginning of the war. So more or less since the beginning of November somewhere, there's no more full ethnic cleansing, but rather again this kind of fight on the agricultural and grazing lands. So this is the situation there, and you have something like 100, maybe 150 Israeli activists that do sorts of shifts in this area and also in the northern parts of the West Bank, in the Jordan Valley.
Jordan Valley, yes.
And a little bit in the area of, above the Jordan Valley, between the Jordan Valley and Nablus and Jenin in Ramallah. So you have these 100, 150 Israeli activists that come for shifts. You could say that maybe at any given moment you have maybe 20, 30, 40 activists all over the West Bank that are doing this kind of work. They don't necessarily have a name of an organization or anything. There's a few. One that is called Looking to the Occupation in the Eyes. Another is Dayush. Another is Hinenu, which is in my area also. But many of them just don't have a name. There's a few more. Hakel.
So many small parts, organized groups.
Yeah, and it's very, very much characterized by the let's say, how to say that, no bullshit kind of. No, funding, names, project. Just go give it. Try to help. Something that is like not. People don't want to make a big deal out of it. Just let's go. Take a car. Anyone has a car. Let's go. Not like, okay, I have a project. I call it this. I ask for funds. I post online. I try. It's like very. Let's try to make that not happen, right? So I would say that in a way it helps a little bit, but not very much. And it is only for the most vulnerable communities of the Palestinians that are in Area C, and that are usually shepherds, and that are usually living in communities that are between 50 to 100 people, and people that are not necessarily all of them doing it for the Palestinian cause, but just trying to live, just to stay on the land. So it's very small scale, very, very small scale. And I would say that it's very different from, let's say, Breaking the Silence, Combatants For Peace, B'Tselem, many organizations that used to work a lot more in general sense, let's change the minds of Israelis, let's change the minds of Palestinians, that's advocacy, exactly, changing the discourse, all sorts of strategies like that are very characteristic of the first decade of the 2000s. And I do now my thesis about it. This is why I speak about it in such way, right? It's a little bit my thesis, right? So it's during the second decade of the 2000s, I feel that there was a very strong kind of despair and losing of faith in advocacy and in democratic discourse. Like Breaking the Silence says, we will bring testimonies of us, the soldiers, of how we oppress Palestinians, and we will show you that there is no way to make a military occupation over a different people without this being violent and indiscriminatory and creating more terrorism against us, more backlash. This is not for security. This is for domination of Jews over Palestinians. And this is supposed to, you bring it as a testimony of a soldier. This is supposed to have the Israeli society speak about it, understand that, vote differently, and in the end finish the occupation, which of course never happens. And there is some sort of a despair, a disappointment of activists in that way of working, and it seems that the other activism, the protective presence that I described before, has a very kind of tangible outcomes. Even if it's not the best, you at least know, I went today, I saw this Palestinian shepherd, he went with his sheep out, a settler arrived with his herds and with tractors and guns, and they kicked them out. And we called the police and we stood there, and in the end the Palestinian could graze his sheep and goats another day, and maybe tomorrow he will not come, the settler. Maybe even for 3 or 4 days he will not come. But we'll have to do it all the time. So it's small successes, almost nothing when you compare it to the cause, right? The Palestinian struggle, but it is very tangible because I went and I could hear someone, a friend that had another day of his sheep and goats eating. This is where we're at in terms of...
So now the places you're walking is slightly, so situation is getting better, right?
Comparing to a month ago?
Yeah, a month ago.
It is better. A month and a half ago, it is better now. Comparing to 2 months ago, it is worse. And I'm talking about, again, a very, looking at weeks and months. But it is no guarantee that today, tomorrow, in a week, maybe a month, the war in Lebanon will start, and then the situation again will be horrible there, and right. So it's just kind of little waves.
Yes.
Yeah. So you can't take it as like, oh, now things are better. It's like very. During the military, I was very Zionist. I grew up in a Zionist home, which is very secular, atheist, right, not religious, and very dedicated to the idea that Jews should have a state, a Jewish state, in Israel, Palestine, and that in order to do that, we need to have a strong army, and without this, we are all persecuted because of anti-Semitism. That was the basic idea. And I knew about the peace process. I was for the peace process. I considered myself liberal left, Zionist, but left-leaning. And I thought that it's good to have a peace process, it's good to have a Palestinian state at the end of it, but until that moment we have to protect ourselves. And then if there are terrorist attacks, blowing up buses, for example, suicide attacks inside Jerusalem, Tel Aviv, we have to go and police the area, basically. I didn't think about it as police. But when I look back at it, I understand that it was a police state of mind. There is someone that went out of a village and blew up a Palestinian that went into an Israeli city and blew himself up and killed civilians. So I go and catch, not the person that blew up, naturally, because he committed a suicide attack, but the person that sent him to that, his commander, and then when you go and do that, you enter the village, you are not being accepted as police would be accepted in Tokyo or in Tel Aviv, right? They'll say, yeah, you know, if I'm an Israeli and the police now enters this place and says there is a suspect here, you say, do whatever you have to do, you know?
Yeah.
I'm not going to. But when a Palestinian, if we're in a Palestinian cafe and the Israeli military enters, you of course don't see that military as a good policing force. And Palestinians shoot at us when I was a soldier. So you shoot back, and you feel that you're in a war zone. You don't feel that you are in a civilian town or village. And therefore, as a soldier, you shoot almost indiscriminately. Not completely, at least at the time. Now in Gaza, they shoot completely indiscriminately. But at the time, it was more, and you shoot, and sometimes you hit other people, and you don't even know, and you don't even care, because you are in a mission, and all the Palestinians are your enemies in your mindset. And then, for Palestinians, what for me looked like a justified police activity, I go to catch the bad person and go back, and then they shoot me, so I shoot back. For them, it was a terror attack. The soldiers are going in and shooting indiscriminately. And it took a while for me to understand that every time we go in to catch someone who was responsible for a suicide attack, we kill other people. And that their relatives become terrorists. So we were part of a cycle of creating terrorism. And I realized it only by the end of my military service, just a few months before I was released. When I realized that, it was a great shock to me. Because I realized that I was not contributing to safety, but second, that I'm a terrorist myself. And that I was lied to. And then I started to look back into the whole situation of the occupation and see that Israel has never wanted to give Palestinians a state. It was a lie. And if there's no process of becoming a state, there is no justification of violence that is indiscriminate. If you want to control this, give everyone citizenship. But of course, Israel doesn't want to give citizenship to everyone there because then the Palestinians will outnumber us, and then we will lose the Jewish majority in the votes. And then I started to understand that a Jewish state means that we must have a majority of Jews, or else we are in apartheid. And then I started to look back at 48 and the independence war, what I called the independence war at the time, now I call it the 48 war, it's more neutral, in which also the Nakba happened, the ethnic cleansing of the Palestinians, which basically made the Jews 80% of the areas that they conquered, what was to be called Israel in 1948. And that it's all under it, it's everywhere. It's here in Haifa, it's where I grew up, it's in the fields, I saw it, I used to, and that I never knew it. It's like a denial that suddenly came out. But also the 48 war, what used to be considered for me as a Zionist, the basis of a war that I used to be so thankful that we won. Suddenly I saw it in the light of ethnic cleansing, of the same ideology that doesn't want to give Palestinians equal rights, ethnically cleanse them, not only in 48, but also the whole time after that, inside what is Israel and in the West Bank and in Gaza Strip. And suddenly I stopped being a Zionist anymore, because when you, more or less 1948, if you accept that it is a necessary war, that was good that we won it, even if you know that we ethnically cleanse Palestinians, if you agree for that, you are a Zionist. If you don't agree for the 48 war, more or less, right? Generally speaking, everyone has their own definitions, but generally speaking, if you don't accept the 48 war as a good war with good outcomes, you're not a Zionist. So I became non-Zionist or anti-Zionist. And from that point on, somewhere, I also had to leave a little bit Breaking the Silence and Combatants For Peace, which were I was part of co-founding, especially Combatants For Peace. Right? In Breaking the Silence, I was more in the outskirts, doing work, but a little bit from the outskirts. In Combatants for Peace, I was part of establishing it, co-founding it. I led it for a year on the Israeli side. But they were both set on this Zionist approach that while being against the occupation and for a two-state solution, still very much comes from the point of view of wanting a Jewish state with a Jewish majority, which is something that I moved away from around 2008 or 9, somewhere there. And then I also, in a certain moment, left these two organizations somewhere in 2011 or 12 and looked for other ways to be active. But frankly, I was very disillusioned from the possibility of changing anything. And for a long time I wasn't active, and I came back to be active in the past 2 years, working on the thesis about Taish, South Devon Hills, the protective presence activism that now I do and write about.
So nowadays, so how can I say? So people against this occupation and some violence against to the Palestinians is increasing, or the younger generation, especially younger generation. I don't know, but generally how.
I think Israel is. It's hard to tell, right? And now we are in a moment that is like this war changes people very, very strongly. It's hard to tell where it goes, right? In general, I would say that until the war, it became more and more polarized within the Israeli society. The right wing became more outwards with its non-democratic wishes, meaning apartheid is okay or whatever you call that. Palestinians will never have a state, and we're not even wanting to pretend that they will. That maybe someday, like the right wing used to speak about. And the left wing in Israel, still the Zionist one, became more accepting of the idea that Israel is becoming an apartheid. And this is speaking about the Israeli Zionist kind of society until the war. And so there's like a polarization between very kind of fascist, far-right, fundamentalist Jews who want to take over and make it a completely fundamentalist state, and a liberal bloc, which is very big, that is both Zionist and liberal at the same time. And more people kind of said, yes, there's a problem with us controlling the Palestinians. The occupation, right? None of them goes back to 48 to say, hey, there was an ethnic cleansing here. None of them say there should be a right of return. Inside Israel, Palestinians here were occupied in 1948. The city of Haifa was ethnically cleansed from all Palestinians. 70,000 Palestinians lived here and 70,000 Jews. Before the war of 48, all of the Palestinians were kicked out, and about 2,000 to 4,000 started coming back after the war and managed to stay. So after the war, you had a couple of thousands of Palestinians that were not ethnically cleansed, and they were given citizenship. But they were very broken as a society after 48, and that it was a small amount. So the state of Israel could say, we are a democratic state, we give everyone citizenship, but we just don't allow anyone to return. From Lebanon and Syria, Jordan and Egypt, where they ran away to. Also, some of them were left inside Israel, and they were not allowed to return to their villages. The villages were destroyed, something like 500 villages. And on top of them, Jewish villages and towns were built, and they did not allow the Palestinians to return to them. So the Palestinians here would be already third generation.
Third generation.
Third, maybe even fourth in some of them. And they would speak very good Hebrew, they have citizenship, so they have a lot less discrimination from Jews comparing to the ones in the West Bank. And of course, the ones in Gaza are a lot more. We basically have four main statuses of Palestinians in Israel-Palestine. The ones on top, the best situation are the ones that have Israeli citizenship, like the ones here in Haifa. Then you have East Jerusalem, which have a middle status, residency it's called. And then the ones in the West Bank that do not have citizenship. And then the ones in Gaza that are also occupied, but they live in a ghetto or a big concentration camp, or however you want to call that. But they are still under the Israeli control and occupation, even though Israel has, and most of the Israelis believe that Gaza is separate from Israel. We still control, Israel controls all of Gaza. We control what goes in and out, control the water, control the currency, we take taxes. And there is a kind of a smart advocacy move to make the world think, and also Israelis think, that we do not control Gaza. So when we have an attack, like the October 7th attack, we speak about the right to defend ourselves as if it is an outside force that comes, and not downwards, down up, a bottom up uprising. which is violence, and not necessarily people should be able to protect themselves. But after the first day or two, October 7th, October 8th, when all of the Palestinians that were in the area of Israel, not in Gaza, were killed or kicked back to Gaza, this became not a war of defense, but vengeance, only vengeance. That goes not to catch the people that did the October 7th massacre inside Gaza, but to just get back vengeance in all the society. In Haifa, the Palestinians are very, most of them very educated, most of them high society, more or less. And most of them, so there's no, and the Jews too are a lot more liberals here. So you didn't have any real clashes here. And yesterday there was a demonstration of Arabs, Palestinians, Israeli Palestinians, or Palestinians with Israeli ID, what some people refer to as Israeli Arabs. They led a demonstration against the war in Gaza, against the massacre, and Jews came to support them, or even organized together. So it's a very special place in Israel where you actually have leadership that is either only Palestinian or Palestinian Israeli together that leads the left here. It's not the majority of the people, of the Jews, that would do that, but it is very, very much a Haifa kind of experience or model that you have here. So there's almost no violence. Of course, the police didn't allow it. In the beginning, the police didn't allow any demonstrations and arrested pretty brutally Palestinians here in Haifa. The police arrested people for posts, Palestinians with Israeli ID, for posting online things that felt like they're not, like they could be not a little bit supportive of the Hamas. All what I saw, I didn't see support from the Hamas. I saw people speaking about the context, right? Why did the attack happen? Things of that sort.
Yeah, that's what I did too.
Like occupation, speaking about occupation.
I did not carefully do.
And then they were arrested.
Is what I'm saying.
This is the situation here. So it's a more liberal place than other parts of Israel. Like you go to Tel Aviv, so you have Jaffa and Tel Aviv are two cities under one municipality.
Yeah, this is why.
And there you have less coexistence like you have here. And the Palestinians, they are in a different situation, but it's still better than Jerusalem, for example, that the Palestinians there are not citizens even. They live in the same municipality with Jews, and that 40% of Jerusalem are Palestinians.
No, I have to, every time I have to
and there the police is a lot more brutal. You had, after the war started, you had very brutal attacks of the Israeli police over Palestinians there. There's also a mutual few groups of Israelis and Palestinians working together in Jerusalem. I would say that it's maybe the Haifa and Jerusalem are the two most the biggest centers of that, of collaborative struggle. You could call it a collaborative struggle, or Jews joining Palestinians against the occupation. But generally Jerusalem is a lot more violent towards Palestinians, and the Palestinians there are a lot more Palestinians in their struggle, a lot more. Here you have some of the Palestinians would say, I'm not a Palestinian, I am an Israeli Arab. And some of the Palestinians say, yeah, I'm Palestinian, but I don't feel connected to the Palestinian
but yeah, something is
political structures, none of them. But I feel Palestinian in my heart. But I'm also Israeli. This is what you would have people here, especially in this street and coffee shops that this is a little bit of the complexity. Of course, the West Bank, their things are very separated. Settlers, and you have Palestinians, the status is completely different, citizens versus occupied people, and there the collaborative struggle, if you can say, Israelis coming to help Palestinians has a lot more kind of difference. So we come and help Palestinians that are very defenseless, while we are very coming usually from the Israeli elite. So most of these activists are usually coming from affluent families, maybe not very rich ones, but at least comfortable lives. So it's very pronounced difference. Comparing to here, that here you would be active with Palestinians, and after that you go and drink coffee with them or beers and go to a similar way of life and so on. The Palestinians in the West Bank that never worked inside Israel, they only worked maybe with settlers. The only Israelis they see are either settlers or Palestinians or military. So they only see violence.
That's why more resistance.
Of course they see for them the word Jews means people with guns that come to take away your land, patronize you, shoot you, kill your father, took your, threaten you, and want to destroy you and eliminate you from the land. So there is no, and they do it because they're Jews, or in the name of Judaism, the settlers and the military, in the name of a Jewish state. And then when they speak about the Yahud, the Jews, and about the horrible things that they do. When it is read outside in the United States, for example, people say, oh, they're anti-Semitic, because they speak about the Jews, not about Israeli. So they hate all the Jews. And this is the way that propaganda works. Settlers and the military comes to them, and in the name of Jewish superiority of Jewish state, they kick them out of their land and destroy them, they put walls, and that's because they're not Jews. So for them, naturally, Jews are the problem. But they don't speak about Jews anywhere. They speak about their own experience, which is very, very much true. Jews for them are the Satan, I can totally understand that. People that go and work inside Israel, especially older generations, Israel doesn't allow so many to go and live here. But people in the age of me, and even older, 50, 60, 70, used to work inside Israel, get friends, they were never the same, they might be against the occupation, but they remember sitting with their boss's family, giving, moments of humanity between people, and people are not armed, they're not, so they have also good experiences with Jews, and then they say, yes, over there inside Israel are good Jews, the ones over here in the West Bank, the settlers, the military, no. And then they have more kind of balance there. And of course, Palestinians over here that live their daily life, they know Israelis from the inside. And they know that some people are like this and some people are like this, and they might be very much against the state or the occupation, but they will not be against the whole state of Israel, because many of them will say, I like the ministry of, maybe I'm okay with universities that are part of the Israeli state. I like them, I study there. I'm okay with the police, I want police in my streets, that will be, and so on. But I don't like the military, and I don't like a few parts of this Israeli state that oppresses my own people. So the Palestinians here will be very much, they know the most, they have a lot of experience. They understand the Israeli state and the Israeli society from within. So the Israelis in general, let's say the group that you're speaking about is what you can call Zionist left, Zionist liberals, which are not like myself, that I am non-Zionist or anti-Zionist activist. They would say we're Zionists and we want a liberal state. So we acknowledge the Palestinians have to have some arrangement, but maybe not a full state, maybe without military, and then any sort of resistance to us, Israelis, that is armed or violent, is terrorism. Even if it's only killing soldiers, which is okay by international law, and it's not supposed to be called terrorism, it is called terrorism for them. So this is how it's kind of all meshed into one. And if a Palestinian says, I'm okay with Israeli civilians, but in the minute that an Israeli civilian come and occupies me with a gun and doesn't give me my freedom, I'm allowed to fight him and kill him. That's an act of war. The occupation is an act of war, and me shooting him, the soldier, is an okay thing. Then I will never go and, some Palestinians, they will say, but I will never go and kill civilians. And then it's very blurred because many Israelis say, yeah, it's okay to kill Hamas, but not civilians.
Yes, that was my point.
But of course, in the end,
so I think there's like
both sides are killing a mixture of both. On both sides, the armed people are mixed into the societies. So it's very hard to differentiate. And then these liberal Zionists would have hard time saying, what do we have to do when we have an attack like that by Hamas? So we have to go and protect ourselves and fight the Hamas itself. And then we shouldn't aim and direct it at civilians, but if they die, it is not because we want it. Even if we knew that they're going to die, it's not because of us, it's because of the Hamas that is using them as human shields. Of course, these people will never say that when they go on a bus and there are 5 soldiers next to them, armed, these soldiers use them as human shield, right? So we justify attacking a vehicle that has 5 Hamas people and 3 women that are not, but they will not justify the Hamas shooting a bus with 5 armed soldiers and them inside, right, civilians. So it's always this kind of something they don't see, some basic. And then they might, the people that are working for the bring them back home now, the ones say we need to negotiate with Hamas because the most important thing is to bring back the hostages. But when it comes to Palestinian lives, and in this moment we're talking about at least 25,000, and everyone says that it's going to be a lot more, so maybe 30, maybe 40,000. We don't know of dead Palestinians. Majority of whom are not armed nor Hamas. This is something that the people of Bring Them Back Home Now either don't care about, or even sometimes are okay with, as many as are killed, we don't care. Just are these hostages, or they say it's it's a pity, but it's not our job to take care of them. What many people of this kind would say to me, I don't have the space in my heart to contain both the horrors that are done to Jews and the horrors that are done in Gaza. This is something that I hear a lot from very close people. They tell me, look, I don't want Palestinians in Gaza to be killed, But to be really honest with you, I can't hold both pains like it's one or the other, right? So they are very, very, very much think about every hostage of the 136 that we have, and they know names and what they love to do and photos and share on Facebook, bring them, I can't breathe, I can't stop thinking about this child, about this woman, about this man. And when you speak about the tens of thousands of killed and maybe 60 or 70,000 of injured and about 2 million people that are in suffocation without food and water and with plagues, this is for them something they can't hold for some reason. And it's of course because most of them are very dedicated, very Zionists. We separate it and we support the military. And for me, the military and the Hamas are one and the same. They are working in the same ways. Each one has got a little bit, the Hamas is, maybe people are more unhinged in the sense of religious kind of, even though we have that too in the Israeli military, but this is based on fundamentalist Islam that I can relate a lot less to. But in the amount of killing civilians, in the amount of long-term horrors, I think the Israeli military is worse. Anyways, I don't really try to compare them so much as they're both doing horrible stuff and they're both living by death and blood and destruction. And this is what keeps them alive, these two organizations. So for me, the Hamas and the IDF are one and the same. But I differentiate not between Hamas and the IDF or Israelis versus Palestinians. I cut the whole picture differently between people and the systems. Because you might have here a soldier that now comes back from Gaza. Maybe he killed many innocent people. Maybe he didn't. Maybe he actually helped someone. Maybe, I don't know what he did there. I know that the military in general did horrible crimes there. Now this guy comes and sits next to me. I will not take him to be immediately a criminal. Like a person from the Hamas. Maybe joined the Hamas, but maybe he didn't do horrible things. Maybe he did, Hamas did horrible things as an assistant. But the people themselves are individuals, and I know it because of myself, that I feel like I'm a good person, and that I was always a good person. And at the moments that I was a criminal, and I did crimes, and I was a terrorist against Palestinians, I did it not because I was a bad person, but because the system, this is what you do. You go, I tried not to kill indiscriminately, but I was part of the system. So I think it's a lot more healthy to not think about bad people and good people, or Israelis and Palestinians, or Hamas versus IDF, but rather systems, especially systems of power, systems of destruction and war, and people. And the people participate in these systems, but they are not the systems. This is how I understand the society, and I think it's better because it allows people to change their minds too. I don't say to all the Jews, you are all Nazis, even though the feeling here is a feeling that everyone is like, kill all the Arabs, I don't give a fuck. And not all the Palestinians, even if they support the 7th of October, I don't see them as all Nazis, because they have a moment that they are afraid, they are indoctrinated, they have propaganda, they whatever, but they're people, they can change, both sides. So I think it's good to separate systems and people in such sense. Yeah, I think it goes in every moment. The systems are living through us. So in every moment now you are a human, a friend, a nice person that I'm sitting down and talking to, but you also have a job of interviewing me, and you hold them two together. And you're also a customer at the same time. So you can hold these systems that you're in all the time together, and you can be a soldier, and at the same time you're a human, and you're a son of someone, so you see an old woman, she reminds you of your mother, even though she's Palestinian maybe. So you're also suddenly a child, seeing a woman that looks like his mother, thinking about, but also a soldier. So these systems, we work by them. We don't need to, at any moment, being only this or only this or only that. Yeah, so if in such a moment, you could be killing people for nothing, and then feeling horrible about it 2 minutes later and trying to do something good about it. And it's hard to say, maybe you saved someone that wouldn't be saved otherwise. And it's hard to say that you're just bad or just good. You can say, but I think it doesn't really brings us to a better society. Not to always judge bad and good, because it's tiring, and you see the discussions online and in the news. It's only about how bad is this side or the other side, how good you are, that you support this or you don't support it. It's all about bad and good, instead of just trying to fix things and make them a little more livable. First of all for Palestinians, but also for Israelis. You know, we're a little obsessed, I think, with morality. Which is maybe good to be good, but not all the time to just think through this prism. Like, if we wouldn't be doing that, for example, we could, after the Israeli military kicked back all the Palestinians to Gaza on October 8th, or killed them, and it was safe now for Jews, instead of saying, now we deserve to kill Palestinians as a revenge, because they are the bad ones, so whatever we do, we are the good ones. And instead of thinking like that, just saying, wait, what do we actually going to get out of that? Maybe the best thing to do is use the horrible thing that was done here to get to dismantle Hamas, but in a way that also allows Palestinians to live. So say, take the world, the international community, judge those that were involved in October 7th, dismantle Hamas. We are not going to use our force to kill Palestinians, but we also want to make sure that Gaza is now also free, and they have a possibility to build a port and their own water system, sewage system, and electricity. And you know, if you use this, you don't just think about good and bad. You can actually have a good life here.
I mean, maybe
it's all man-made
shots sometimes.
horrors. It's not climate change. Climate change is also man-made, but it's harder to stop.
I mean, anything where you're using a scale on should have something like that.